Media and coaches, players, there are no holidays, so thanks for coming in. Just a little bit of a recap on our game Saturday. It was a really good performance, but there's certainly areas to improve on. I do believe Missouri's going to win a lot of football games, and we played well, they played well, and we made one more play than what they did. We knew there was going to be a lot of ebb and flows within the game, and so we're real pleased with that. A couple things I'd just like to touch on. One of the things that we impressed upon our football team, our mantra is playing Cowboy tough. And what does that all mean? And I've always said this, that, football's a man's game played by men, and it'll bury your soul naked. And, somebody's going to spit the bit out, or you're going to come up victorious, and we did there. And I don't want to make too much of that, but a couple things are starting to emerge that I think embody the type of football team that we want to have. And that's a physical, tough team. And so how that comes about, things that I saw from the game that were so encouraging. I saw our offensive line be able to come off the football and establish the line of scrimmage and maintain blocks. Saw defensive guys that thought we were on point tackling, and not only tackling, but were disruptive when we got to the football. That ball came out, a couple of fumbles. We had an interception. I know there were a couple other calls out there. And so that's an indication of a physical, tough, explosive defense. So we're encouraged about that. I think, too, anytime you have a quarterback that goes out and stiff arms somebody and then takes off and runs, those are messages that, when you have a quarterback that does that, that's a message to your entire football team. Those guys that are down in the trenches, when they see your quarterback do that, that's the type of football team that we want. And I believe that's the type of football team the state of Wyoming embraces. And so we need to capitalize on that and continue moving with that. But that mantra of Cowboy tough, I believe, is starting to unveil. And so a really big win. I think that win started many years ago by a commitment by our administration, Tom Berman's vision on elevating Cowboy football. And that came about by a lot of people. Certainly, our state government understood the importance of athletics and the university, and so with the Cowboy match, those funds came about a couple years ago, and so you saw what began to play out. Now, I said that began. This is a starting point, and I mentioned to Tom, I said, one of these days you're going to see us play and win a big game, and it's not because we got a quarterback that runs sideways and can throw a football in the back of the end zone on a rope and is a first-round draft choice. One of these days you're going to look down and go, we're just better than the other team. And we saw elements of that Saturday night. For me, I saw elements that we were not out of place, that we didn't look athletically out of place. They had players that made plays, and we did too. And so that's encouraging. I can also tell you this, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. As we went through and gleaned through a lot of the things in the tape, we've got a high ceiling, but to get to that ceiling, we've got to have a lot of improvement. And typically teams improve the most between the first game and the second game if they embrace what the coaches are talking about, and you have a coaching staff that season is on point and is able to point out all the positive things, but also not graze over where we have to improve to accomplish what we need to improve. And so it's going to be a big, big point of emphasis today and throughout the week. We have got to improve, and I believe we have a hungry football team, we have a competitive football team, but we still have an inexperienced football team that has got to recognize that for us to win more games, that we have got to improve. And so that's going to be a big, big point of emphasis today and throughout this week. And so we're encouraged with the start, but that's a start. However, I think there's certain games that really help elevate a program nationally. I've always said this, perception becomes reality nationally. How people view things. You can you can drive down some places over by Torrington and you're on the highway, and I always say this, there's a big herd of cattle over there in a feedlot and the wind's blowing this way, it looks like $1 million. Wind's blowing the other way, smells like. And my point is, I think that experience last night changed how we're viewed nationally from a lot of our peers. I know I received a lot of messages from, I think, pretty learned football people who saw our game and watched it and were impressed because we beat a really good football team. As I said, that Coach Odom's doing a great job. They have good players. They're in a good league. And I think that, the future is bright for them, but I also think the future is bright for us. Now, moving on to Texas State, they came up against a really tough opponent in Texas A&M on a Thursday night. And I can tell you, Kyle Field is probably one of the most impressive college football venues in the country. I don't know if there's more of a rabid fan base. It's loud. It's an imposing environment, and so they went into a tough environment. And I thought there were some things that they did well. They're playing 2 quarterbacks right now, and they exchanged them during the course of the game. Both of them bring certain assets or positive things to the game. And so I don't know which direction they're going to go as they get ready to go. Vitt and Jensen are their 2 quarterbacks. I know Coach Stitt is their offensive coordinator. He had a major impact on the jet sweep when he was at Colorado School of Mines and had a big impact, at UVA or University of West Virginia with that. And as a matter of fact, in one of their bowl games. And he's a creative coach. Their head coach is a really creative offensive guy. And so we've gleaned through that tape, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that they're going to show in the second game. But there were elements of their offense that are certainly challenging. Defensively, they got, they operate out of a 3-down front. And anytime you do that, you better have a big nose guard, which they do. And so we're going to have, a different odd front than what we had last week. And so that'll be some stuff to prepare for. They're certainly, aggressive in the secondary. And then also for us, being a relatively young football team, you can say going on the road doesn't make any difference. I think it doesn't make any difference when you can control the things that you can control and you can have, real consistency and great focus. And when you're a younger player, sometimes you don't understand, there are changes. You're hopping on an airplane, you're in a different arena, the weather's different. And so those are things that we'll need to see how our team responds. We really believe we have an experienced seasoned coaching staff and good men who are great teachers that are going to put our players in position to go out and give their best effort. And it's going to take a really good effort to beat Texas State. So at this time, I'll open up to any questions anybody in the audience might have. Robert, you're up first.
Right. On the depth chart, no Antonio Hall is an update, and I see that Patrick's the starter over Eric. Is that just, did he play better?
No. I you know what? I made an error there. Eric is going to start instead. So that's my error, Tim. I should have given that to Tim. So Eric's going to start.
Oh, okay.
Matter of fact, Eric was selected as the offensive lineman of the game. So it's an oversight on my part. Antonio Hall is currently at home, and it's a personal matter. It had nothing to do with team discipline. It had nothing to do with university issues. It's strictly a personal thing. And so we'd ask that you would respect that. These are students. And so I'm not going to comment any more than that, but that's where those things lie. But I would ask that you trust me when I made that statement, that it encompasses exactly that it's strictly a personal issue.
When you say back home, is he back in California?
Yes, he's back in California right now. Mm-hmm. So other questions, yes, Davis.
You mentioned this still being a relatively young team, and after a win like Missouri, I'm sure they're going to hear all week about how great they are. Do you worry about complacency or this win lingering into the next game?
That's always a concern, but that's why we got coach on our shirt.
Yeah.
We believe these players believe in our coaches. Our coaches understand what it's going to take for this football team to continue to improve. And if we can focus on continual improvement, that's a term that I used this morning with our players in the meeting, that we've got to have championship teams embrace continual improvement. They always stay hungry. And so for us, if you're looking forward and you're looking at what you've got to do and the challenges that are out there, you're not going to be complacent because you recognize that you've got to get better. If you're looking in the rearview mirror and you're listening to all the people telling you maybe how great you are and watching some of the highlights, that's when teams get tripped up. And so we've got to control the things that we can control, Davis, and one of those things is our mentality during this course week of practice. And that's the best indicator that we know, that's the best indicator I know to make sure we improve. Yes, Robert?
You've always talked about also too a 24-hour rule about, win or lose,
Right.
24 hours and then move on. Do you feel pretty confident? You mentioned your experienced coaching staff, that obviously this was a big win, but starting today that focus will be back. Or is that something, because of such a big win, you'll have to emphasize more with your guys?
I can tell you my initial gut feeling is we're going to be on task. The proof's going to be in the pudding on how we practice. I'm not saying every time your outcome in the game is going to be reflective of the body of work that you've done during the course of that week. Sometimes you have a great week of practice and you don't perform well, or other times you haven't practiced well but you perform well. I would say that's very much in the minority of the big pie. Typically, if you go out and you prepare and coaches are on point and these players embrace what the coaches are saying and take their lead, and I think we have good leadership, then you're going to go out and you're usually going to play well. And so we know we've got a big challenge. I know the last time the Cowboys went down to Texas State, we came up on the short end of the stick, and everything we got to get to 1-0. We got to get to 1-0. Everything we're doing right now is get to 1-0, and we got the Bobcats in the in our scope. Other questions? Yes, Davis.
When you looked at the film, what were some of those things that you feel like you guys have to improve on?
Well, first of all, I think we need to improve our pass rush, and that was a concern. Quarterback had too much time. Certainly, his legs, posed some problems for us, but in some of our zones got skewed. But we've got to rush the passer better. I think at times we were undisciplined in our back seven, to where we voided some areas. Sometimes they exposed that, and other times they didn't, but that became really apparent. If you look at our completion percentage, Sean's got to throw the ball better, and he can throw the ball better, and so those are going to be some things that we have to look at. And then the other thing, I think, we're really proud that we went out and they jumped out on a 14-0 lead, and our guys stayed with the game plan. But that next phase, when we really had a chance to close the door on them, we didn't do that. We had a chance to close that game out to where a throw in the back of the end zone would not have made any difference. I'm sure our administration likes it because we probably kept everybody in the stands longer and had better concessions and made it more exciting. Our man Harkins and I had another fun time at the end. But those are things that we've got to improve on. Within the kicking game, I thought we were pretty solid, but they had a big punt return against us. And so those are things that we've got to clean up. And we believe our players are mature enough that they're going to look at that tape and go, yeah, coach is being honest here. I've got to get better at those things. Yes.